The scream came first. Before the champagne hit the floor, before the gasps, before the security guards started moving through the crowd, the scream. Don't trust her. Don't trust the maid. She's lying. She's a liar and she's been planning this for months. The woman screaming was wearing a $14,000 Valentino gown, standing barefoot on the terrace of a Miami Beach penthouse, mascara running in 2 black rivers down both cheeks, pointing a shaking finger at a woman half her size standing 10 feet away in a pressed gray uniform. The maid didn't scream back. She didn't move. She didn't even flinch. She just held up a phone, turned the screen toward the 200 guests frozen around the infinity pool, and pressed play. What played on that screen was a video, 43 seconds long. No sound needed. Just footage of the billionaire's fiancé in a hotel lobby 3 states away, kissing a man who was not the billionaire, handing him an envelope thick enough to see from across the room, and then both of them walking toward an elevator together. But that wasn't the part that destroyed everything. The part that destroyed everything was the second video. Same woman, different hotel, different man, different city, same envelope, same elevator, and a wedding ring already on her finger. The fiancé wasn't just cheating. She had been married the entire time. And the maid had the proof on a phone that 200 people were now watching in complete silence while the most expensive engagement party in Miami fell apart in real time. How did a 25-year-old housekeeper from a small town in Alabama end up standing on the terrace of a $30 million penthouse with footage that would end up on every news channel in the country by morning? That story starts 11 months earlier. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you found this channel. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from tonight. I read every single one. Now, her name was Iris Monroe, 25 years old, born and raised in Selma, Alabama, a town where everybody knew your business before you did, and where dreams that were too big for the zip code usually died quiet deaths on front porches. Iris never had big dreams. She had practical ones. Graduate high school, which she did. Find steady work, which she tried. Take care of her mother, Pauline, who had been in a wheelchair since a car accident when Iris was 14 and whose insurance had run out 3 years before it should have. When the job listing appeared online for a live-in housekeeper at a private residence in Miami Beach, Iris read it 4 times before she let herself believe it was real. The listing was simple. Live-in housekeeper for private waterfront residence. Room and board included. Competitive salary. Discretion essential. No prior experience required. Iris applied at midnight from the kitchen table of her mother's house, the same table where Pauline sat every morning sorting pills into a plastic organizer, because the home nurse they couldn't afford anymore wasn't coming back. She typed her application on a phone with a shattered screen protector and hit send without rereading it, because if she reread it, she would talk herself out of it. For days later, a man named Mr. Calloway called. Deep voice. Efficient. No small talk. The position is with the household of Mr. Adrian Voss, Mr. Calloway said. You will live on the property in staff quarters. Your responsibilities include daily housekeeping, meal coordination with the private chef, laundry, and event preparation. Mr. Voss entertains frequently. You will be expected to maintain the highest standard of cleanliness and the lowest possible profile. Are those terms acceptable? Yes, sir, Iris said, already packing in her head. She arrived in Miami on a Tuesday afternoon in September, stepping out of a Greyhound bus into heat so thick it felt like walking into a wall. A car sent by Mr. Calloway picked her up and drove her across the MacArthur Causeway toward Miami Beach, and when the penthouse came into view, Iris pressed her forehead against the window and forgot how to breathe. Adrian Voss was 38 years old. A self-made tech entrepreneur who had built a cybersecurity company from a 2-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas, sold it for $2.3 billion at age 33, and retired to Miami Beach to do what he called living on purpose. He sat on boards. He funded ocean conservation projects. He flew to Washington twice a year to testify about data privacy. And he did it all without a publicist, without a personal brand, and without ever once appearing on a magazine cover by choice. The first time Iris met him, he was standing in the kitchen at 6 in the morning, making scrambled eggs in a wrinkled linen shirt, bare feet on the cool marble floor, humming a song she didn't recognize. He looked up and grinned. Not a polished grin. A real one, slightly crooked. The kind that made you feel like you had known him longer than you had. "You must be Iris," he said. "Mr. Calloway says you came all the way from Alabama. That's commitment. Welcome to the chaos. Don't let the view fool you. This place is a mess half the time, and I'm usually the reason." Iris liked him immediately, not in the way tabloids would later try to suggest. She liked him the way you like someone who treats you like a human being when the world has trained you to expect otherwise. 7 months into Iris's employment, Adrian brought someone home for dinner and never asked her to leave. Her name was Camille Ashworth, 32 years old. The kind of woman who made an entrance without trying, or at least that's how it looked. Tall, dark-haired, effortlessly elegant, with a voice like warm honey poured over gravel. She told everyone she was a former gallery curator from Charleston, South Carolina. Old family money, a quiet divorce behind her, a fresh start in Miami. Adrian was hooked within weeks. Iris watched it happen the way you watch a tide come in. Slowly at first, then all at once. He canceled board meetings to take her to dinner. He flew her to the Bahamas on a Tuesday because she mentioned she'd never seen pink sand. He bought her a ring 6 weeks after their first date, a 4-carat emerald-cut diamond that Iris had to sign for when it arrived because Adrian was too nervous to be home when the jeweler delivered it. Iris didn't dislike Camille at first. She had no reason to. Camille was polite if distant. She said please and thank you. She stayed out of Iris's way. She didn't treat the staff like furniture, which in Iris's limited experience already made her better than most. But then Iris saw something she wasn't supposed to see. It was a Thursday afternoon, 3 months after Camille moved in. Adrian was in Washington for a 2-day conference. Iris was bringing fresh towels to the master suite when she passed the guest bedroom and noticed the door slightly open. Camille was sitting on the guest bed with a laptop open in front of her and a phone pressed to her ear. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was what Iris saw on the laptop screen as she passed. Photographs. At least a dozen of them arranged in a grid. And every single one was Camille but not Camille. Different hair, different styles, different names typed beneath each photo in what looked like a spreadsheet. Blonde in one, short hair in another, a redhead in a third. And beside each photograph, a man's name, a city, and a dollar amount. Iris's feet kept moving, but her brain stopped. She walked 3 more steps down the hallway, set the towels on the console table, and stood there with her heart slamming against her ribs. She told herself she had imagined it. The screen was small. She was moving. The angle was wrong. She couldn't have seen what she thought she saw. But Iris had spent her whole life reading rooms, reading faces, reading the difference between what people showed you and what they were actually doing when they thought nobody was paying attention. And she knew, with a certainty that settled into her chest like a stone, that she had not imagined it. Iris didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small staff room with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, replaying what she had seen on that laptop screen over and over until the images burned themselves permanent. Different faces, different names, different cities, dollar amounts. She wasn't a detective. She wasn't a journalist. She was a 25-year-old housekeeper from Selma, Alabama, who had barely finished high school and whose most sophisticated piece of technology was a phone she had bought secondhand from a pawn shop. But Iris understood patterns, and what she had seen on that screen was not a coincidence. It was a system. She started small. The next time Camille left the penthouse for her weekly spa appointment in Coral Gables, Iris cleaned the guest bedroom the way she always did, but this time she paid attention to everything. The drawers Camille kept locked. The second phone that appeared and disappeared from the nightstand depending on whether Adrian was home. The small leather travel bag Camille kept in the back of the closet behind a row of winter coats nobody wore in Miami. Iris didn't touch anything that first time. She just mapped it, memorized what was where, counted the locks, noted which drawers Camille opened with a key she kept on a separate ring from her regular keys. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, on a Sunday morning when Camille left for brunch in Wynwood and forgot her second phone on the bathroom counter. Not the iPhone Adrian had bought her. The other one. A cheap prepaid Android with no case, no lock screen, no password. Iris stood in that bathroom for 45 seconds before she picked it up. 45 seconds of knowing that what she was about to do could end her job, her income, her mother's medication, everything. She picked it up. The phone had 11 contacts. No names, just initials, and a photo gallery that made Iris's hands go cold. Screenshots of wire transfers. 6 of them. Different bank accounts, different amounts, all ranging between $100,000 and $200,000. Receipts from a document forging service in Fort Lauderdale. And 3 photographs of marriage certificates. 3 different states. 3 different names. 3 different men. Camille Ashworth did not exist. The woman living in Adrian Voss's penthouse, wearing his 4-carat ring, sleeping in his bed, had been married 3 times under 3 different names, had never legally divorced any of them, and had systematically drained each man's accounts before disappearing and resurfacing somewhere new with a new face, a new story, and a new target. Adrian Voss wasn't her fiancé. He was her 4th victim, and he had no idea. Iris put the phone back exactly where she found it, walked to her room, sat on the edge of her bed, and pressed both hands flat against her knees to stop them from shaking. She had the truth. But the truth without proof was just a story nobody would believe from a maid nobody would listen to. Iris spent the next 6 weeks becoming someone she didn't recognize. On the outside, she was the same quiet housekeeper who scrubbed countertops and folded linen and disappeared into the background the way Adrian's world expected her to. On the inside, she was building a case. She started with what she could access without risk. Public records, marriage databases, county clerk websites from the 3 states she had seen on those certificates. It took her nights of searching on her cracked phone screen, squinting at government databases that weren't designed for mobile, teaching herself how to cross-reference names and dates she barely understood. But piece by piece, the picture came together. Camille Ashworth was a name that didn't exist before 4 years ago. No birth certificate, no school records, no employment history, nothing before a Florida driver's license issued in 2019 with an address that turned out to be a mailbox rental in Fort Lauderdale. Before that, she was Danielle Mercer in Scottsdale, Arizona. Married to a real estate developer for 14 months before he woke up one morning to find his joint accounts emptied and his wife gone. Before that, she was Natalie Vance in Savannah, Georgia. Married to a retired surgeon for 11 months. Same pattern. Same vanishing act. And before that, she was Rebecca Holt in Nashville, Tennessee. The first one. Married to a music producer for 9 months. He lost $300,000 and spent 2 years trying to find a woman who no longer existed under the name he knew. 3 men. 3 cities. 3 identities. And now a 4th. Iris documented everything. Screenshots. Dates. Names. Marriage records. She created a folder on her phone and backed it up to a free cloud account she made with a fake email address because she was terrified of losing it. But she knew that documents alone wouldn't be enough. Camille's world was built on paper lies, and paper lies could be explained away by expensive lawyers. Iris needed something visceral, something visual, something that couldn't be argued with or buried in legal motions. She needed video. The opportunity came 5 weeks before the engagement party. Adrian mentioned over breakfast that he would be in New York for 3 days, meetings with a foundation board. Camille kissed him goodbye at the door, told him she would miss him, and waited exactly 2 hours before making a phone call. Iris heard fragments from the hallway. A man's name she didn't recognize. A hotel. Tomorrow afternoon. That night, Iris bought a $60 action camera from a pawn shop in Little Havana, watched 4 YouTube tutorials on how to use it, and set her alarm for 5 in the morning. She was going to follow Camille, and whatever happened at that hotel, Iris was going to record every second of it. Iris followed Camille the next afternoon in a rented car she paid for with cash she had been saving for 3 months. She kept 2 cars behind, the way she had seen people do it in movies, and prayed that real life worked the same way. It did. Camille drove north on I-95 for 40 minutes, past Fort Lauderdale, past Pompano Beach, and pulled into the parking garage of a boutique hotel in Boca Raton. Not a chain. Not a place anyone would accidentally stumble into. The kind of place people chose specifically because nobody asked questions. Iris parked on the opposite side of the garage, slipped the action camera into the front pocket of her jacket, and walked into the lobby like she belonged there. She sat in a leather chair behind a potted palm, opened a magazine she didn't read, and waited. Camille appeared 7 minutes later. Different walk, different energy. The soft, gracious woman who kissed Adrian goodbye that morning was gone. In her place was someone sharper, faster, a woman who moved through that lobby like she owned every room in it and had done this 100 times before. A man met her near the concierge desk. Mid-40s. Expensive suit. No wedding ring but a tan line where one used to be. He smiled when he saw her. She smiled back, the same smile she gave Adrian, and it made Iris's stomach turn. Iris pressed record. She captured 43 seconds of footage from behind that potted palm. Camille embracing the man. Camille handing him a thick envelope. Both of them walking toward the elevator bank together, his hand on the small of her back. Clear faces. Clear movement. No room for misinterpretation. Iris stopped recording, stood up, and walked out of that lobby on legs that felt like they were made of paper. But she didn't drive home. Something told her to wait. So she sat in the rented car in that parking garage for 4 hours. Engine off, windows cracked, heart pounding, until Camille's car finally pulled out and turned south toward Miami. Iris followed again. But Camille didn't go home. She drove to a second location. A different hotel. Smaller, quieter, tucked behind a strip mall in Deerfield Beach. And a different man walked out to meet her in the parking lot. Older, heavier, a wedding ring clearly visible on his left hand. Iris recorded again. 91 seconds this time. Same envelope exchange. Same body language. Same elevator. Iris sat in that parking lot after Camille left and stared at her camera screen for a long time. 2 hotels. 2 men. 2 envelopes. 1 afternoon. This wasn't an affair. This was a business. And Camille was running it in broad daylight while wearing Adrian's 4-carat diamond on her finger. Iris drove back to Miami that evening with 2 videos on a $60 camera and a decision that felt heavier than anything she had ever carried in her life. She had the proof. 2 videos. 3 fake identities confirmed through public records. Wire transfer screenshots from a burner phone. Marriage certificates from 3 different states. Everything she needed to destroy Camille's entire operation in a single conversation. But a single conversation was exactly what she couldn't afford. She thought about going to Adrian directly, sitting him down in the kitchen where he made his scrambled eggs every morning, handing him the camera and saying, "The woman you love is a con artist who has done this to 3 men before you, and she's going to do the same thing to you." And then what? Camille would walk in. Camille would cry. Camille would wrap her arms around Adrian and say the maid was obsessed, jealous, delusional. She would say Iris had fabricated the videos, manipulated the records, invented the whole thing because she was in love with Adrian and couldn't stand watching another woman have what she wanted. Adrian's friends would believe Camille. His lawyers would believe Camille. His family would believe Camille. Because Camille had spent 7 months perfecting the performance of a devoted, gentle, adoring partner, and Iris had spent 7 months being invisible. That was the math. A maid's word against a fiancé's tears. And tears always won in rooms where money made the rules. Iris sat in her staff room that night with the camera plugged into her phone, watching the footage on a screen barely 5 inches wide, and understood with terrible clarity that the proof only mattered if it couldn't be intercepted, discredited, or quietly buried before anyone else saw it. She needed witnesses. Not 1 or 2. Hundreds. She needed a moment so public, so undeniable, so impossible to spin that Camille wouldn't have time to craft a counter-story before the whole world had already seen the truth. The engagement party was 5 weeks away. 200 guests. Adrian's closest friends, his business partners, his family. Every person in his life who mattered, gathered in one place on one night, celebrating the woman who was systematically preparing to rob him blind. Iris stared at the date on her phone calendar and felt something shift inside her chest. Not courage exactly. Something quieter than that. The calm, steady understanding that if she didn't do this, nobody would. And Adrian Voss, the man who made his own eggs and hummed songs in the kitchen and treated her like a person from the very first morning, would lose everything to a woman who had turned destruction into a profession. 5 weeks. Iris closed the calendar, plugged the camera into its charger, and started planning. The engagement party was Camille's masterpiece. She had spent 3 weeks planning every detail herself, which Iris now understood was not generosity but control. Camille chose the guest list. Camille chose the caterer. Camille chose the photographer. And Camille chose the terrace overlooking the ocean as the main venue, because a woman who had done this 3 times before knew exactly how to build the stage for her own performance. The penthouse was transformed. White roses covered every surface. A string quartet played on the lower terrace. Champagne towers caught the last golden light of a Miami sunset. 200 of the most influential people in South Florida were arriving in town cars and being escorted through the lobby by staff Camille had personally vetted. Iris moved through it all in her pressed gray uniform, carrying trays, adjusting flower arrangements, refilling ice buckets, the camera hidden inside a small crossbody bag she wore under the excuse of carrying her phone and cleaning supplies. The 2 videos were loaded on her phone, ready to play. She had rehearsed this moment in her head every night for 5 weeks, planned every step, anticipated every reaction. But that morning, standing alone in the service hallway behind the kitchen, Iris froze. She thought about her mother, Pauline, sitting in that wheelchair in Selma, sorting pills every morning with hands that shook a little more each month. She thought about the wire transfer she sent home every 2 weeks that paid for the medications insurance had stopped covering. She thought about what would happen if she stood up on that terrace tonight and nobody believed her. If Camille's lawyers came for her. If she lost this job, this income, this lifeline that kept her mother alive. She almost put the phone back in her room. Almost convinced herself that she could mail the evidence anonymously to a reporter and let someone else take the fall. Almost decided that it wasn't her responsibility to save a man who had 100 people around him who should have seen this coming. And then Adrian found her. He was standing in the hallway adjusting his tie, looking at himself in the window reflection with a nervous, boyish smile. He turned when he heard her footsteps and his face lit up the way it always did. "Iris, I don't say this enough," he said quietly, almost shyly. "But you've made this place feel like a home. Not just clean. Not just organized. A home. I don't think I ever had that before you got here." He meant it. Every word. She could see it in his eyes. And in that moment, Iris understood that if she stayed silent tonight, Camille would take everything from him within a year. His money, his trust, his belief that good things could happen to good people. And he would never even know why. Iris looked at him, smiled softly and said, "It's going to be a beautiful night, Mr. Voss." She turned toward the terrace, her hand resting on the bag against her hip, and didn't look back. The party had been perfect for 3 hours. Camille glided through the crowd like she had been born into this world. Champagne in one hand, Adrian's arm in the other, laughing with donors and charming every person who came within 5 feet of her. She was radiant. She was untouchable. She was performing the role of her life for the 4th time, and every single person on that terrace was buying it completely. Iris worked the edges, invisible as always, carrying trays, collecting empty glasses, watching the clock on her phone tick closer to the moment she had chosen. It came at 9:32 p.m. Adrian stepped up to the microphone near the infinity pool to make a toast. 200 guests turned toward him, champagne glasses raised, the Miami skyline glowing behind them. Camille stood beside him, her hand resting on his chest, her smile so perfect it could have been painted on. "To the woman who made me believe that the best part of life doesn't have to be behind you," Adrian said, his voice slightly unsteady with genuine emotion. "To Camille." 200 glasses rose into the air, and Iris stepped forward from behind the champagne tower, phone in hand, and spoke. "Before anyone drinks to that," Iris said, her voice carrying across the terrace with a clarity that shocked even her, "there is something every person here needs to see." The terrace didn't go silent immediately. A few guests chuckled, assuming it was a planned surprise. Adrian lowered his glass, confused but smiling. Camille's eyes snapped to Iris like a switch had been flipped, her body going rigid beneath the silk of her gown. "This woman is not who she says she is," Iris continued, holding her phone high. "Camille Ashworth does not exist. That name was created 4 years ago with forged documents. Before that, she was Danielle Mercer in Scottsdale. Before that, Natalie Vance in Savannah. Before that, Rebecca Holt in Nashville. She has been married 3 times under 3 different names, never divorced any of them, and drained every man she married before disappearing." The silence hit like a wall. 200 faces frozen. 200 phones gripping tighter. Camille moved first. She let out a sharp, brittle laugh, turned to Adrian with wide, wounded eyes, and delivered the line she had clearly prepared for exactly this kind of emergency. "Don't trust her. Don't trust the maid," she screamed, her voice cracking through the ocean air. "She's lying. She's been planning this for months. She's obsessed with you, Adrian. This is revenge because I caught her stealing." "That's a lie," Iris said quietly. "And this is the proof." She turned the phone toward the crowd, pressed play, and the first video lit up the screen. 43 seconds of Camille in a Boca Raton hotel lobby, embracing a man, handing him an envelope, walking toward an elevator together. 200 guests leaned in. 200 phones started recording. The second video played immediately after. Different hotel, different man, same woman, same envelope, same elevator. Camille's scream cut through the silence like glass breaking. "Turn it off. Turn it off. That's not me. That's fabricated. Adrian, make her stop." But Adrian wasn't looking at Camille anymore. He was staring at the phone screen with an expression that was collapsing in real time, piece by piece, the way a building falls when the foundation is pulled out from under it. Adrian didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His face said everything 200 guests needed to see. The disbelief dissolving into recognition. The recognition dissolving into something worse. The slow, sickening understanding of a man who was finally seeing the person standing next to him for what she truly was. He turned to Camille. His voice came out barely above a whisper, almost too quiet for the microphone still clipped to his lapel, but every speaker on that terrace carried it. "Is any of it real? Any of it? Even your name?" Camille didn't answer the question. She lunged. Not at Iris. At Iris's phone. She crossed the terrace in 3 desperate steps, heels skidding on the wet marble, and grabbed for the phone with both hands, screaming that it was all a setup, all lies, all fabricated by a jealous maid who wanted what she had. Iris pulled back. Camille's nails raked across her forearm, leaving 3 thin red lines from wrist to elbow. But Iris didn't let go. She held the phone above her head, stepped backward, and let 200 phones capture every second of a woman in a designer gown clawing at a housekeeper's arm while screaming denials that nobody on that terrace believed anymore. Adrian said one word to his security team standing near the pool bar. "Now." 2 guards moved forward. Camille fought them the way she fought everything, with performance. She collapsed to the marble, sobbing, clutching Adrian's ankle, begging him to listen, swearing she could explain everything. But Adrian stepped back, gently removed her hand from his leg, and walked away without looking at her again. Police arrived within 14 minutes. What they found in Camille's locked guest bedroom drawer that night confirmed everything Iris had documented. The burner phone, the forged identity documents, 3 marriage certificates from 3 different states under 3 different names, and bank records showing wire transfers totaling over $700,000 stolen from 3 previous men who had each believed they were married to the love of their life. Camille Ashworth, Danielle Mercer, Natalie Vance, Rebecca Holt, whatever her real name was escorted off the property in handcuffs, barefoot on the marble floor, her Valentino gown twisted at the shoulder, mascara dried in dark lines down both cheeks, still whispering denials to officers who had already stopped listening. Adrian found Iris an hour later. She was sitting alone on a plastic crate in the service corridor behind the kitchen, her uniform still pressed, the 3 red scratches on her forearm still fresh, her phone resting on her knee with the screen dark. He sat down beside her on another crate. quiet for a long time. The ocean was audible through the walls, waves hitting the seawall in a rhythm that didn't care about anything that had just happened. "How long did you know?" he asked. "For months," Iris said quietly. "I saw something on her laptop I wasn't supposed to see. I spent every day after that making sure I could prove it before she did to you what she did to the others. Why didn't you just tell me?" Iris looked at him with eyes that carried 4 months of sleepless nights behind them. "Because I was the maid," she said softly. "And she was everything you wanted to believe in. If I told you alone, she would have cried and I would have been fired before breakfast. I needed every person on that terrace to see it at the same time, so she couldn't make it disappear the way she's made herself disappear 3 times before." Adrian didn't speak for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, rested his elbows on his knees, and said something Iris would remember for the rest of her life. "You didn't just save my money, Iris. You saved me from becoming a man who never trusts anyone again. Because if she had finished what she started, that's exactly what I would have become." 6 months later, Adrian established a victims advocacy fund in partnership with 3 federal agencies investigating romance fraud and identity theft. He asked Iris to sit on the advisory board, not as a token, not as a gesture, because she understood, better than any lawyer or investigator in the room, what it looked like when someone was being lied to by a person they loved, and what it cost to be the one person willing to say something about it. Iris Monroe didn't become a billionaire. She didn't marry Adrian. She went back to a quiet life, kept sending money home to Pauline and Selma, kept calling her mother every Sunday night the way she always had. But she became something no amount of money could buy. A woman who proved that the truth doesn't need a title, a platform, or $1 billion net worth to be powerful. Sometimes it just needs one person brave enough to press play at the right moment, in front of the right people, when staying silent would have been so much easier. A reporter asked her once, months later, if she was afraid that night on the terrace, standing in front of 200 strangers while a woman twice her social standing screamed that she was a liar. Iris thought about it for a moment. "I was terrified," she said. "But I kept thinking about the 3 men before Adrian who woke up one morning and realized everything they believed was a lie. Nobody warned them. Nobody stood up. Nobody pressed play. And I decided I would rather be the maid who got fired for telling the truth than the maid who stayed quiet and watched it happen a 4th time. If this story moved you tonight, I would love for you to tap that like button. It genuinely helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. And if you're new here, hit subscribe because we tell stories like this every single week. Real stories about courage, truth, and the quiet heroes who change everything when it matters most. And if you know someone tonight who needs a reminder that one voice really can make a difference, share this with them. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I'll see you in the next one.